I was sitting in a hospital waiting room when I finally understood how close I had come to dying. Not in the dramatic, movie-like way people imagine, no flashing lights, no screaming doctors. Just a quiet hallway, a plastic chair that stuck to the back of my legs, and a paper cup of coffee going cold in my hands while a police officer stood a few feet away, pretending not to stare at me. They had just taken my sister away. Not to jail, not yet, but to a private room where 2 social workers, a detective, and a child psychologist were waiting. And all of it, every single thing that had happened, could be traced back to the moment my niece spoke, the girl everyone thought was mute. The girl no one listened to, the girl who, in less than 10 seconds, told me a sentence that saved my life. I didn't know it then. I thought she was just saying something strange, something meaningless, something childish. But I would learn slowly, painfully, that she had just pulled me out of a trap that had been closing around me for years, and my sister had no idea. Not yet. 3 weeks earlier, I was standing in my sister's kitchen, folding tiny pink socks that smelled like lavender detergent. Her name was Marissa, my niece, 6 years old, big brown eyes, long lashes, always watching, always quiet. Everyone said she was mute, doctors, therapists, teachers. She understands everything, my sister Eliza liked to say. She just doesn't speak. She said it with pride, like it made her special. Like it made her a martyr. Eliza was 3 years older than me, but people always assumed she was younger. She had that kind of face, soft, expressive, innocent, the kind that made strangers trust her instantly. I was the opposite, sharp jaw, tired eyes. A permanent crease between my eyebrows from worrying too much. When our parents died in a car accident 9 years earlier, Eliza had cried in public. I had cried in private, and somehow that meant she was the emotional one, and I was the cold one. So when she married Ethan, wealthy, charming, and generous, it felt like she had finally won something. When I struggled to pay rent, she'd say, "Why don't you just come stay with us for a while?" And I would, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. That's how it started. I moved into their guest room 2 years ago after my second layoff in 18 months. Ethan worked in private equity. He was always flying somewhere, New York, Zurich, Singapore. He said he was building our future. Eliza stayed home. She didn't work. She said Marissa needed her. She's special, Eliza told everyone. She needs full-time care. What that meant in reality was that I became the babysitter, the cook, the housekeeper, the unpaid assistant. And slowly, without realizing it, I became something else. The scapegoat. It began with small things. If a glass broke, it was my fault. If Marissa spilled juice, it was because I wasn't watching her. If Ethan was in a bad mood, it was because I made the house tense. Eliza never said it cruelly. That's what made it worse. She said it gently. Sweetly, with concern. "You just bring negative energy sometimes," she'd whisper. And I believed her. I tried harder. I spoke softer. I moved quieter. I apologized for things I didn't understand. And Marissa watched, always quiet still, too aware for a 6-year-old. She followed me around the house. Sat near me when I folded laundry. Leaned against my leg when I cooked. She never spoke. But sometimes, when Eliza wasn't looking, she would press her small hand into mine, like she was trying to tell me something. I didn't know what. Until the night Ethan told us he'd be gone for 2 weeks. "Zurich," he said, kissing Eliza's forehead. "Big deal closing." She smiled like she always did, proud, grateful, dependent. The next morning, Eliza said she needed to run errands. "Just an hour," she said. "Stay with Marissa, okay?" I nodded. I always nodded. She grabbed her purse, kissed Marissa on the head, and left. The house fell silent. No TV, no music, just the hum of the refrigerator. I was on the couch, scrolling through job listings on my phone, trying not to cry. Marissa was sitting on the rug, lining up her toy animals. Perfect rows, perfect spacing. I didn't realize she had moved until I felt her standing in front of me. I looked up. She was staring at me, not blankly, not passively, intently, like she was solving something. I smiled. "Hey, bug," she didn't smile back. She climbed onto the couch beside me, tucked her legs underneath herself, and leaned in. So close I could smell the strawberry shampoo in her hair. I assumed she wanted comfort. She rarely did this. Then she opened her mouth and spoke clear. "Calm, perfectly, Auntie," she said. My heart slammed into my ribs. I froze. I stared at her. My brain tried to reject what it had just heard. Her lips moved again. "She's going to kill you." I laughed, not because it was funny. Because my brain needed to protect itself. "What?" I said. Marissa tilted her head. "She puts it in your tea." My throat went dry. "What, sweetheart?" She leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "The white powder in the blue jar. Mommy says you're in the way." My phone slipped from my hand. It hit the floor. I didn't feel it. I was staring at my niece, 6 years old, supposedly mute, looking at me like she had been waiting a long time to say this. "She said you're a problem," Marissa continued. "She said Daddy will fix it." My body went cold. "What did she say?" I asked. Marissa's eyes flicked toward the kitchen, then back to me. "She said you won't be here much longer." And that was when I heard the front door unlock. The sound of the front door unlocking snapped me out of my paralysis. Marissa slid off the couch instantly, back to her spot on the rug, back to lining up her animals, silent, still, like nothing had happened. My heart was slamming so hard I thought I might pass out. I stood up too quickly, my vision tunneled. I gripped the back of the couch, the door opened. "Elena," my sister called. "I'm back." My name in her voice, warm, casual, harmless, felt like a knife. "In here," I croaked. I tried to steady my breathing, tried to look normal. Tried to pretend a 6-year-old hadn't just told me my sister was trying to poison me. Eliza walked in, arms full of grocery bags, smiling. "God, traffic was awful," she said. "Marissa, baby, did you behave?" Marissa didn't look up. I was staring at my sister's hands, her purse. Her face looking for something, guilt, tension, anything. I saw none. Eliza glanced at me. "You look pale. Everything okay?" "Yes," I said too quickly. She narrowed her eyes slightly. "Are you sure?" I nodded, "just tired." She hummed, unconvinced, then set the bags on the counter. I felt like I was underwater. Every sound was muffled, every movement slowed. Marissa didn't look at me, not once, not even when Eliza hugged her. That night I didn't drink the tea. Eliza made it like she always did, chamomile with honey. She set the mug on the side table next to me. "You should relax," she said. "You're always so anxious." I forced a smile. "I'll drink it in a minute." She watched me, not obviously, not directly, but I felt her attention. When she went upstairs, I poured the tea down the sink. My hands were shaking. I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying Marissa's voice over and over, not slurred, not hesitant, perfectly clear. "She puts it in your tea, the white powder." The blue jar. I needed proof, not for the police, for myself, because the idea that my own sister, my blood, was trying to kill me felt impossible. The next morning, Eliza left Marissa with me again. "I have therapy," she said. Marissa didn't react. As soon as the door closed, I crouched in front of her. "Marissa," I whispered. She looked at me, fully present, aware. "You spoke to me yesterday," I said. She blinked. I held my breath. "You can talk," I said. She nodded. My stomach flipped. "Why doesn't Mommy know?" I asked. Marissa lowered her gaze. "She said I'm special," she whispered. "She said if I talk, they'll take me away." "Who will?" I asked. She shrugged. "The bad people." "Why did you tell me?" I asked. She looked up. Her eyes were steady. "Because she said you'll be gone," she said. "And you're nice." My chest ached. I swallowed. "Marissa, what did Mommy put in my tea?" She stood up, walked to the kitchen, pulled a chair over to the pantry, climbed, reached, and pulled out a small blue jar from the back of the top shelf. My hands were sweating as I took it from her. No label, just white powder. "Where did she get this?" I asked. "She said Daddy sent it," Marissa replied. "Does she put it in anything else?" I asked. She nodded. "Sometimes in your soup." My legs felt weak. That afternoon, I took the jar and drove to a private lab, paid cash, told them I suspected poisoning. They promised results within 48 hours. I barely made it home before Eliza returned. She smiled at me like always. That night she made soup, set the bowl in front of me, watched. I pretended to eat, pushed it around, complimented it, then dumped it down the toilet when she went upstairs. 2 days later, I got the call. The powder was a mixture of benzodiazepines and trace amounts of a slow-acting anticoagulant, in small doses, hard to detect, designed to cause fatigue, dizziness, internal bleeding over time, symptoms that could be mistaken for stress, anemia, depression. The doctor asked me if I was safe. I said yes. I lied because I needed to understand why. I needed to know how deep this went. That night, I pretended to faint. I let myself slump in the kitchen, hit the floor, didn't move. I listened. I heard her footsteps, slow, careful. She stood over me. I didn't breathe. She picked up my wrist, checked my pulse. Then she whispered something that made my blood run cold. "It's working." I wanted to scream. Instead, I stayed still. And that's when I realized something worse than the poisoning. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't emotional. This was planned. And whatever Eliza was doing, she believed she had all the time in the world. She was wrong. I lay on the cold kitchen tile for nearly 4 minutes after Eliza whispered those words. "It's working." She didn't rush. She didn't panic. She didn't call for help. She stood there watching me, breathing slowly like she was observing a process, not a person. I kept my eyes half-lidded, my breath shallow. She eventually knelt, brushed my hair from my face, and said softly, "Poor thing, you've been so stressed." Then she went upstairs, didn't call an ambulance, didn't wake Ethan, didn't even check again. I waited another minute, then 2. Then I stood. My legs were weak, but the adrenaline carried me. I locked myself in the bathroom and threw up, not from poison, from betrayal, from terror, from the realization that my own sister was trying to erase me slowly, invisibly. And I finally understood something that had been haunting me for years. I wasn't a burden. I was an obstacle. I spent the next 3 days pretending. I drank the tea. I ate the soup. I nodded. I smiled. And I spat everything out when she wasn't looking. I flushed it, I rinsed my mouth. I kept the empty containers hidden in my car. I started recording, audio, video, every interaction. I set my phone to record in my pocket whenever I was near her. I pretended to be weaker, slower, more forgetful. I let my hands tremble. I stumbled, I complained of headaches. Eliza watched me with something I had never seen in her eyes before, satisfaction, but also urgency. She started making me more food, more tea, more smoothies. You need to keep your strength up, she said. One night she sat beside me on the couch. So, she said lightly, have you thought about what you'd want if something happened to you? My stomach dropped. What do you mean? I asked. She shrugged. You don't really have anyone, no kids, no husband. I just think about these things. I smiled weakly. I guess I'd want Marissa taken care of. Her lips twitched. Of course, she said. I recorded everything. Then I checked my credit. Someone had opened a life insurance policy in my name. Beneficiary, Eliza. Amount, $750,000. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. She had forged my signature, backdated it, and she was killing me to collect, slowly, quietly. I thought about calling the police. I thought about running. But then I thought about Marissa and what would happen to her if I disappeared. I needed more than survival. I needed proof, and I needed her confession. I began talking to Marissa every morning, in whispers, in corners, in the car. She told me things, terrible, small, devastating things, how Eliza practiced crying in the mirror. How she told Marissa to pretend not to understand when people talked, how she said doctors liked special children, how she said Daddy was busy fixing problems. How many problems? I asked. Marissa shrugged. 3. I froze. 3 what, baby? She counted on her fingers. 3 people. My blood ran cold. Do you know who? I asked. She shook her head. Just you. I asked about Ethan. Marissa hesitated. He doesn't know, she whispered. Mommy said he's too soft. That night I broke into Ethan's office. I wasn't proud. But I was desperate. I searched his drawers, his files, his laptop, and that's when I found the folder. 3 names, 3 dates, 3 insurance payouts, all from accidental illnesses. All distant relatives of Eliza, an aunt, a cousin, a stepbrother, all dead, all in the last 10 years. All with Eliza as the caregiver, all with policies taken out months before their deaths. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the laptop. She wasn't just trying to kill me, she was experienced. The next morning I pretended to collapse again. This time she called an ambulance. Because it fit the narrative. At the hospital she cried, held my hand, told the doctor I was under so much stress. I let them run tests, I let them find the anticoagulants. I acted confused. The doctor pulled Eliza aside. I recorded it all. She's bleeding internally, he said. This doesn't happen randomly. Eliza gasped, clutched her chest. This is my fault, she sobbed. I squeezed her hand. It's not, I whispered, and that's when I decided I wasn't going to run, I was going to finish this. I contacted a lawyer, quietly. I showed him everything. The recordings, the lab results, the insurance policy, the folder. He stared at me. This is premeditated homicide, he said. I nodded. I know. What do you want? He asked. I thought about Marissa, her small hand in mine, her voice clear, brave. I want her to confess, I said, and I already knew how. The lawyer's name was Adrian Cole. He was in his late 40s with a calm voice and eyes that didn't flinch when I told him everything. Most people reacted with horror. Adrian reacted with calculation. She's careful, he said, but not perfect. I slid my phone across the desk. Audio files, videos, Marissa's whispered statements, the lab report, the insurance policy, the folder from Ethan's laptop. He studied them one by one. This is enough for an investigation, he said, but not a conviction. What's missing? I asked. Intent and confession. I exhaled. She won't confess to me. No, he said, but she might brag. I frowned. Brag? People like your sister don't see themselves as villains, Adrian said. They see themselves as superior, smarter, deserving. So what? I asked. I flatter her into confessing. He smiled faintly. No, you let her believe she's already won. I returned home from the hospital looking worse than I felt. They put me on iron supplements. Eliza acted like a saint. She brought me blankets, soup. Pillows. She told everyone I was so fragile. I played my part. I slept more, moved slower, forgot things, let my hand tremble when I lifted cups, and I started asking questions, soft ones, careful ones. Do you think people get what they deserve? I asked one night. Eliza looked at me, amused. What do you mean? I mean some people struggle so much and others just glide. She sipped her wine. Life isn't fair. I smiled weakly. You've always been so lucky. Her eyes lit up. I worked for it, she said. How? I asked. She tilted her head. You sound curious. I shrugged. I guess when you're dying you wonder about things. She stiffened, then relaxed, then smiled. You're not dying, she said. You're just tired. I let a beat pass. I trust you, I whispered. Her lips curved and something dark shimmered behind her eyes. The more helpless I became, the bolder she grew. She started leaving the blue jar out on the counter, unhidden. She stopped hiding her movements. She stopped pretending not to watch. One afternoon, I pretended to nap on the couch. She stood over me. I kept my breathing shallow. She spoke almost tenderly. You never appreciated what I did for you, she whispered. My nails dug into my palm. You drained me, she said, emotionally, financially, always needing help. She sighed. I deserve peace. I recorded every word. Marissa was the hardest part. I hated involving her, but she was already involved. I began telling her stories about brave kids, about secrets, about how sometimes telling the truth saved people. She listened, eyes wide. She's going to make me forget, Marissa whispered one night. What do you mean, sweetheart? I asked. She said if I talk too much, I'll get medicine. I closed my eyes. She already gives you medicine? I asked. She nodded to make me sleepy. I asked Adrian. He went pale. That's child abuse, he said. I know, and we will not wait, he added. The trap had to be perfect. Adrian coordinated with a detective named Ramirez. They couldn't arrest her yet, but they could listen. They could record. They could be ready. We staged a turning point. I told Eliza I was getting worse. I told her I was dizzy all the time. I told her I couldn't sleep. I told her I was scared. She held me, rocked me, and whispered, "It'll be over soon." That was the phrase, the one we needed. 2 nights later, I pretended to have a breakdown. I cried, hyperventilated, clutched her shirt. "I'm afraid," I sobbed. "What if I die and nothing matters?" She stroked my hair. "Do you want to know a secret?" she asked. "Yes," I whispered. She leaned in. "I make things matter," she said. I lifted my head slowly. "What do you mean?" She smiled. "I decide," she said, "who stays, who goes, who gets peace." I trembled, not from fear, from rage. "You're strong," I said. Her chest lifted. "Stronger than anyone I know." Her eyes glowed. "I've always been smarter than you," she said. "And Mom," I whispered. "And Dad," she said. My blood roared. "Even Ethan?" I asked. She laughed softly. "He's a tool." I recorded every second. I pushed. "I don't want to die," I whispered. She tilted her head. "You won't feel it," she said. "Not really. How many times have you done this?" I asked. She hesitated, then smirked. 3. My heart slammed. "Does it get easier?" I asked. She nodded. "You get used to cleaning up." I swallowed. "Is that why Marissa doesn't talk?" Her eyes sharpened. "She talks," Eliza said. To me, my stomach dropped. "She hears things," she added, "but she knows better than to repeat them." My chest burned. "What if she does?" I whispered. Eliza smiled. "Then she'll forget." That night, I sent everything to Adrian, every recording, every confession, every threat. The police were ready. The final step was the hardest, because to catch her, I had to let her think she had already won, and to do that, I had to let her try to kill me one last time. The plan was simple. That was the most terrifying part. People imagine revenge as elaborate explosions, courtroom theatrics, public humiliation. But real traps, the ones that actually work, are quiet, boring, invisible. You let the predator think you're already dead. Adrian arranged everything. The hospital, the paperwork, the police, the toxicology, the safe house. All I had to do was drink, not the poison, but enough of it to convince her I had. They replaced the anticoagulant mixture with a fast-acting sedative that mimicked collapse symptoms, slurred speech, loss of motor control, shallow breathing, unresponsiveness. It wouldn't kill me, but it would look like it did, and she wouldn't wait. People like Eliza never wait once they believe they've won. The night we chose was a Thursday. Ethan was in Singapore. Eliza was relaxed. I told her I was scared, that my chest hurt, that I felt weak. She made me tea, chamomile honey, and I watched her from the corner of my eye open the blue jar, scoop, stir. She didn't hide it anymore. She wanted me to see. I picked up the mug. My hand shook. I met her eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. She smiled. "Always," she said. I drank. The sedative kicked in fast. Within minutes, my muscles felt heavy. My limbs dulled. My tongue thickened. I slumped sideways, the mug shattered. I let my eyes flutter, then close, then still. She didn't rush. She never did. She walked around me, kneeling, watching, waiting. She placed 2 fingers on my neck, checked my pulse, then again. She waited another full minute. Then she whispered, "Finally." She stood, walked to the sink, rinsed the mug, then sat down on the couch, crossed her legs, and sighed, relief pure, undiluted. She pulled out her phone and dialed someone. "Ethan," she said, voice trembling just enough. "Something's wrong." Alina collapsed. She began crying. Perfectly, I recorded everything. From the device hidden in my necklace, the police were already listening. She waited until the ambulance arrived, performed panic, performed grief, performed shock. She held my hand the entire time. "I'm here," she whispered. She didn't mean it. At the hospital, they rushed me into a private room. She told them everything about my stress, my weakness, my anemia, my anxiety. She didn't mention the tea. She didn't mention the jar. She didn't mention the policies. They pretended to work on me. She sat outside, rocking, texting, crying. I watched her through a half-lidded gaze. She was messaging someone. Adrian later showed me. It was the insurance agent. They declared me unconscious but stable. They told her to wait. She did, patiently. Then she went to the bathroom, and that's when she made the mistake. She called her mother, my aunt, she whispered. I did it. The police heard everything. They waited until she tried to access my medical records. They waited until she tried to alter my emergency contact. They waited until she tried to add herself as my power of attorney. Then Detective Ramirez walked into the waiting room, calm. "Professional Eliza Morrison?" he asked. She looked up. "Yes, can we talk?" She smiled. Of course she did. I woke up to the sound of her screaming. Not panic, rage. "You can't do this," she shouted. "I'm her sister." They brought her past my room. Handcuffed, her eyes locked onto mine. I was sitting up, alive, awake, watching her face collapse. No more masks, no more softness, just raw hatred. "You," she hissed. I met her gaze. "I told you," I said quietly. "I trusted you." She lunged. They restrained her. She screamed, threatened. Cried, begged. I never looked away. Marissa came later with a social worker. She ran to me, wrapped her arms around my neck. "You didn't go away," she whispered. I held her and cried for the first time in years, not from fear, from relief. The charges were devastating. Attempted murder, insurance fraud, child abuse, conspiracy, homicide investigation reopened on 3 prior deaths. She never confessed in court, but she had already confessed to me, and that was enough. Ethan flew back in shock. He cried. He begged forgiveness. I told him he didn't deserve it. But he deserved to know, he testified. He turned over everything. He didn't fight. Marissa started talking, publicly in full sentences. She told doctors everything. She told therapists everything. She told the police everything. They called her brave. I called her a hero. Eliza will spend the rest of her life explaining herself. I will spend the rest of mine remembering who I was before I became afraid, and who I became when I stopped being quiet. But this isn't the end, because revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reversal. And I hadn't just survived, I had taken my life back. I thought the worst part would be the trial. I was wrong. The worst part was the silence that came after, not the peaceful kind, the kind that leaves room for memory to echo. I moved into a temporary apartment 2 weeks after Eliza's arrest. Adrian insisted I change cities just for a while, not because of Eliza, but because of the people she had known. Because predators rarely hunt alone. I packed 1 suitcase. I didn't take anything from the house, not a picture. Not a blanket, not a single object that had absorbed her presence. Marissa came with me, not permanently yet. Child services needed time, evaluations, court orders, trauma specialists, but every weekend she stayed with me. She slept curled against my side like she was afraid I would vanish. So was I. The first time she spoke in front of a stranger, I cried, not loud, not dramatically, just silently, my chest aching, my throat closing. She was in therapy, sitting on a beanbag, swinging her feet. The therapist asked her how she felt that day, and she said, "I feel light." I had never heard her use that word before. Light, as if something heavy had been lifted off her small chest, as if she had been carrying it all along. The trial began 3 months later. They let me watch from a private room. I didn't want to see her, not yet. The prosecutor laid out the timeline. The slow poisoning, the insurance policies, the financial patterns, the audio, the videos, the open cases from the past. Each one felt like a stab, because each one proved this wasn't new, this wasn't a mistake. This was who she was, and I had loved her. That truth hurt more than anything. When I finally agreed to testify, they warned me. "She will try to provoke you," they said. "She will try to control the narrative. She will try to make you look unstable." They didn't understand. I had lived with her for years. There was nothing she could do now that would surprise me. When I entered the courtroom, I didn't look at her. Not until I sat down. Not until the oath. Not until the first question. Then I turned. She looked smaller, not weaker, just exposed. She was wearing beige, her hair pulled back, no makeup, no softness. Her eyes met mine, and I saw it. The fury, the humiliation, the disbelief. Not that she was on trial, that I had done this to her. I told the story. Slowly, clearly, I described the tea, the blue jar, the way she watched, the way she whispered, the way she believed she was invisible. The courtroom was silent, no coughing, no shuffling, just breathing. Then they played the recording, the one where she said, "I decide who stays, who goes." She didn't cry, not then. She just stared at me, like she was trying to burn me with her eyes. When her lawyer cross-examined me, he tried. He asked about my mental health, my financial instability, my jealousy, my dependency. He tried to frame me as weak, as bitter, as unreliable. I smiled, because that was the point. I had been weak. That didn't make me a liar. It made me a survivor. Then Marissa testified, not in front of the full courtroom, in a closed room, with cameras, with her therapist beside her. She spoke in full sentences. Clear, precise, she described the blue jar, the whispers, the threats, the medicine. She described how her mother practiced crying, how she told her to be quiet, how she said silence was safety. The judge cried, not openly, but I saw it. When the verdict came, I wasn't there. I was with Marissa in a park feeding ducks, trying to show her what normal looked like. Adrian called. She was found guilty on all major charges. She will never be free again. That night I slept without nightmares, for the first time in years. But justice doesn't end when a sentence is given. It ends when you stop flinching, and I still flinched, at sudden sounds, at footsteps behind me, at unfamiliar voices. Trauma doesn't disappear, it dissolves slowly, Like poison leaving the body, Marissa changed. She laughed loudly. She asked questions. She argued. She cried when she was sad instead of swallowing it. She started school, made friends, spoke to teachers, told stories. She didn't whisper anymore. She sang, sometimes in the shower, sometimes in the car, sometimes at 3 a.m. I never told her to stop. One night, she asked me, "Will mommy come back?" I didn't lie. No, she thought about that, then nodded. Okay, she said, just like that. The power had shifted, but not completely, not yet, because the final stage of revenge isn't punishment, it's transformation, and I wasn't done becoming. I didn't realize how much of my identity had been built around surviving Eliza until she was gone. For years, everything I did had been a reaction, anticipating her moods, adjusting my tone, minimizing myself. I had learned to exist in the negative space around her, careful not to cast a shadow. When that shadow vanished, I felt hollow, not empty, hollow, like a house after a fire, still standing, still intact, but stripped of warmth. The first time I laughed without checking if it was too loud, I startled myself. The first time I disagreed with someone without apologizing, I felt like I was committing a crime. The first time I said no and meant it, my hands shook. Freedom was not gentle. It was disorienting. I started therapy, not because I wanted to process trauma, because I was tired of flinching, because I was tired of doubting every instinct, because I wanted to know who I was without fear shaping me. My therapist, Nora, didn't treat me like I was broken. She treated me like I had been conditioned. There's a difference, she said. One can be fixed, the other can be unlearned. Marissa grew faster than I expected, not physically, emotionally. She had spent years listening instead of speaking, watching instead of playing. She was sharp, perceptive, sometimes too perceptive. She noticed things most children didn't: tension shifts, silence patterns, the way adults avoided certain topics. I worried about that. I didn't want her to grow up hyperaware like I had, so I made rules. We talked about feelings, not secrets. We talked about safety, not silence. We talked about truth, not obedience. One evening while she was coloring, she said casually, "She used to say you were weak." I didn't respond immediately. My chest tightened. "What did you think?" I asked. Marissa shrugged. "I thought you were tired." I smiled. That one sentence healed something I hadn't known was still bleeding. I went back to school, online, criminal psychology, not to become anything, just to understand how someone could wear love like a costume, how manipulation became instinct, how power replaced affection. The more I learned, the less personal it felt, not because it hurt less, but because I could see it clearly. She wasn't a monster. She was a pattern, and patterns can be studied, exposed, disrupted. 3 months after the verdict, a journalist contacted me. She wanted to write a piece about the silent child who saved her aunt. I almost said no, not because I was ashamed, because I was afraid, but fear no longer decided things for me, so I agreed. I told the story, not dramatically, not emotionally, just truthfully. She published it, it went viral. People started writing to me. Women, men, adults, children, stories poured in, slow poisonings, financial traps, emotional erasure, parents, partners, siblings. I read them all, and I recognized something, not just pain, recognition. People weren't just thanking me, they were waking up. I didn't plan to become a voice, but I didn't refuse it either. I began speaking, not on stages, on podcasts, panels, small rooms, safe spaces. I talked about invisible abuse, about how control doesn't always bruise, about how love can be weaponized. I didn't talk about Eliza, not directly. I talked about patterns, and people listened. Marissa attended one event with me. She stood behind the curtain holding my hand. "Are you scared?" she asked. "A little," I admitted. She nodded. "Me too." Then she said, "But you're brave." I squeezed her fingers. "So are you." I began to feel something unfamiliar, pride, not in what I survived, in what I was building. One night after I tucked Marissa into bed, she asked me, "Why did you stay with Mommy?" She clarified. I sat on the edge of her bed. "Because I didn't know I could leave," I said. She thought about that. "Do you know now?" "Yes," I said. She smiled. I did. Revenge had never been about her, not really. It had been about me, about refusing to disappear, about refusing to be erased. About reclaiming the narrative she had tried to write for me. And then 6 months later, I received a letter. From prison, no return address, just my name. My hands trembled as I held it, not from fear, from curiosity. I opened it. 3 lines, that's all. "You think you won, you only learned how to pretend, you're still mine." I stared at the words, and for the first time I smiled, because that was when I understood. She wasn't threatening me. She was admitting something. She couldn't reach me anymore. So she was trying to haunt me, and ghosts only matter if you let them. I didn't tell anyone about the letter at first, not Adrian, not Nora, not even Marissa. I folded it carefully and slid it into the back of my journal, not because I feared it, but because I wanted to understand it. People like Eliza don't threaten, they assert. Even in defeat, they speak from a place of assumed ownership. "You're still mine," it wasn't rage. It wasn't fear, it was entitlement, and that realization did something powerful. It broke the last illusion I had about her. She didn't want me dead, she wanted me erased, possessed, controlled. My death had only been a means. And now that she couldn't touch me, she was trying to remind me that she once could. That was all, a ghost tapping on glass. I showed the letter to Nora the following week. She read it slowly, then handed it back. "She's still trying to narrate your story," she said. I nodded. "What's the new ending?" she asked. I didn't answer immediately because I hadn't thought about that. Survival had been the goal for so long, I hadn't planned what came after. Marissa noticed before anyone else did. She always did. "You're thinking too loud," she said one night while brushing her teeth. I laughed. "That's not a real thing." "It is for you," she said. I knelt beside her. "Do you ever think about her?" I asked. She didn't ask who. "No," she said. "Not even a little," she shrugged. "I don't need to." That was the difference between us. She had been freed. I was still unraveling. The following month, the appeals began, not from Eliza, from her legal team. She never wrote again, not to me, not to anyone. She didn't have to. She knew the system would speak for her now. I attended none of the hearings. I didn't read the motions. I let Adrian handle it, because closure doesn't come from watching your abuser fight to be heard. It comes from deciding you no longer need to listen. One morning, while Marissa was at school, I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't done since before I moved into Eliza's house. I wrote, not emails, not statements, not testimonies, just writing. I wrote about silence. I wrote about control. I wrote about how kindness can be used as camouflage. I wrote about how people like Eliza don't scream, they whisper, and they make you doubt yourself so deeply that you stop trusting your own reality. I didn't write it for anyone. I wrote it because my voice had been stored too long. A week later, I published it, not under my name, not anonymously either, just neutrally. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't graphic, it was quiet, and it exploded. People didn't comment, they confessed, they messaged, they sent stories, patterns, echoes. My inbox became a mirror of pain, but also of recognition, and recognition is the first step to escape. I was invited to speak again, bigger platforms this time, television, conferences. I said no to most. I said yes to one, a women's legal advocacy summit. Not because I wanted attention, because I wanted impact. Marissa came with me. She sat in the front row, swinging her legs. When I finished speaking, she clapped the loudest. And then, when people surrounded me afterward, thanking me, hugging me, telling me their stories, she tugged my sleeve. "You're not quiet anymore," she said. "No," I agreed. "I like this version," she said. "So did I, but transformation isn't linear, and healing isn't clean." 2 weeks later, I froze in the grocery store. A woman laughed behind me. Same pitch, same tone, my chest locked, my hands shook. I dropped the basket, I left, I cried in the car, and I hated myself for it. That night, I told Marissa. She listened. Then she said, "Your brain is still learning." I stared at her. "What? Like when I was learning to talk," she said. "I messed up a lot." I laughed through tears. She climbed onto my lap. "You're not broken," she whispered. "You're practicing." That word stayed with me. Practicing, not fixing, not repairing, practicing, becoming. Then 3 months later, something happened that I didn't expect. The families of the previous victims contacted me. Not all of them, two, the cousin's sister, the aunt's husband. They had read the article. They had seen the trial. They had recognized the patterns. They wanted to talk. We met in a neutral room, a small community center, no cameras. No lawyers, just people whose lives had been folded into hers. I told them everything. They told me things I didn't know, about illnesses, about sudden declines, about insurance changes, about last-minute power of attorney updates. Their grief was different, older, more settled, but it was still sharp. We didn't cry. We didn't hug, we sat in silence, and something shifted. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's collective, sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it's a room of people realizing they weren't crazy. That night, I burned the letter, not ceremonially, not emotionally, just practically. I dropped it into the sink, lit it. Watched it curl and disappear. Marissa watched. "Is that goodbye?" she asked. "Yes," I said. I thought that would be the end of her presence in my mind. I was wrong, because healing doesn't erase, it redefines, and the final confrontation wasn't with her. It was with the part of me that still believed she owned any piece of my story, and that confrontation was coming, sooner than I expected. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of cooking dinner, pasta, garlic, the windows open when my phone buzzed, unknown number. I almost ignored it, almost. Something told me not to. "Hello," I said. "This is Warden Harris from Riverbend Correctional Facility," a calm male voice said. "I'm calling regarding your sister, Eliza Morrison." The world narrowed. "Yes," I said. "She has requested to see you." I didn't answer. "She has refused to eat for 4 days, he continued. "She is insisting on a face-to-face meeting." I closed my eyes. "What happens if I don't come?" I asked. "That's your right," he said. "But I am required to inform you that she has placed you as her sole emotional contact. If her condition deteriorates, you may be contacted again." I laughed, not humor, shock. She poisoned me, I said. Yes, he replied. We're aware. I stood in silence. Then I said, I'll call back. I didn't tell Marissa, not immediately. I called Adrian. He cursed, then paused, then said, this is a psychological move. I know, I said. She wants control, he said. Even now, I know, I repeated. You don't owe her anything, he said. I know, silence. Then I said, but I owe myself something. What's that? He asked. A full ending. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry. I just lay there, thinking about what it would feel like to sit across from her, to hear her voice again, to see her eyes. The part of me that had once shrunk around her stirred, not in fear, in memory. I told that part of me something important. You don't get to drive anymore, I told Marissa the next morning. She listened, then asked, do you want to go? Yes, I said. Why? She asked. I thought about it, because I don't want her living in my head anymore. She nodded. Will she be mean? She asked. Yes, I said. Marissa smiled softly. Then you're stronger. The prison was 2 hours away. Adrian came with me. He didn't have to, but he did. The building was gray, low, unimpressive, which somehow made everything worse, because monsters should have castles, not fluorescent lights. They brought her in, hands cuffed, hair thinner, face paler, eyes exactly the same. She smiled when she saw me, actually smiled like she'd been waiting. They removed the cuffs, sat her across from me, left, the door shut, and we were alone. You look tired, she said. I didn't respond. She studied me. You gained weight, she said. I met her eyes. You failed, I replied. Her smile twitched. You came, she said. So did you, I replied. She leaned back, crossed her arms. So, she said, this is your victory lap. No, I said. This is my goodbye, she laughed, soft, mocking. You don't get to say goodbye, she said. I do, I tilted my head. No, I said. You used to. Her eyes sharpened. You think you're free, she asked. I am, I said. She leaned forward. You'll always be what I made you, she whispered. I smiled. That's what you believe, I said. Not what's true, she scoffed. You were nothing without me. I shook my head. I was quiet, I said. Not nothing, she stared. You came because you still need me, she said. I leaned in. No, I said. I came because you still need me to believe that. She froze just for a moment, then she laughed, but it was hollow. I raised you, she said. No, I replied. You studied me. She clenched her jaw. I protected you. You controlled me. I loved you. You own me. Silence. Then she said, you're alive because I allowed it. I nodded. And I'm free because I didn't wait for your permission. Her eyes darkened. You think you won, she said. I stood. I don't think about winning anymore, I said. I think about living. She stood too. You will regret this, she said. I smiled. I already lived it, I said. I turned, walked to the door, my hand on the handle. She said my name. I paused just for a moment. I forgive you, she said. I looked back. No, I said. You don't get that either. Then I left. Outside, I breathed deep, clean, real. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt light. That night, Marissa asked, did you see her? Yes, I said. Is she still scary? No, I said. She smiled. Good, she said, because you're not. I thought that would be the end, the final chapter, the last shadow, but healing is sneaky. It reveals itself when you stop searching for it. And the next morning, something happened, something quiet, something small, something that told me the story was finally mine. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, not from anxiety, not from a nightmare, just awake. Sunlight filtered through the curtains. The room was quiet, peacefully quiet, not the kind that made you brace, but the kind that invited you to breathe. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the familiar heaviness to press down on my chest. It didn't come. And that's when I understood something that almost made me cry. I wasn't bracing anymore. Marissa was already up, sitting at the kitchen table, drawing. She looked up when I walked in. Good morning, she said. Her voice was confident now, strong, hers. Good morning, I replied. She studied my face. You look different, she said. How? I asked. She tilted her head. Like you slept all the way. I laughed because she was right. We went for a walk after breakfast. No destination, just movement. The air was cool. The sky was pale blue. People passed us with dogs, strollers, coffee cups, headphones, normal lives, normal moments, things that once felt like performances I didn't belong to. Now they felt reachable. Marissa skipped beside me, holding my hand. She started talking about a book she was reading. I listened, not half listening, not distracted. Fully present, and suddenly I realized something else. I wasn't scanning the world for danger. I wasn't anticipating punishment. I wasn't shrinking. I was just there. Later that day, I did something I hadn't done in years. I rearranged the furniture, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. I moved the couch toward the window. I took down the dark paintings I had always said I liked. I didn't. They had just felt familiar. I replaced them with lighter prints. Marissa helped. She gave opinions, strong ones. I let her. That evening, as I tucked her into bed, she asked, do you still think about her? I considered the question carefully. Yes, I said. Does it hurt? She asked. No, I said. Not like before. She nodded, then said, I don't think about her at all. I smiled. That's okay, I said. She thought for a moment, then asked, does that mean I'm healed? I brushed her hair back. It means you were never broken, I said. After she fell asleep, I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. I reread something I had written weeks earlier. A draft, untitled, raw, not polished, just words. I changed the title, not dramatic, not symbolic, just simple. My name is Alina, not survivor, not victim, not sister, not target, just me. I began to write again, not about trauma, about growth. About power, about how sometimes justice isn't loud, sometimes it's subtle, like realizing you no longer check the locks 5 times, like laughing without guilt, like choosing your own furniture, like sleeping all the way. A month later, I was offered a job, not based on pity. Not based on my story, based on my work, my writing, my mind. I accepted, not because I needed validation, but because I wanted a future. Marissa started dance classes. She sang loudly in the mornings. She made friends. She fought with them. She made up with them. She lived. Not cautiously, not strategically, just fully. One night she climbed into my bed after a nightmare. She curled into my side and whispered, you saved me. I held her close. No, I said, you saved me first. She smiled, then fell asleep. Sometimes I still think about the girl I was, the quiet one, the apologetic one, the one who folded herself smaller and smaller, hoping to be loved. I don't judge her, I thank her. She kept me alive long enough to become someone else. And sometimes when I speak now on panels and interviews in rooms full of strangers, I see it, the recognition, the flicker, the moment someone realizes this isn't normal, this isn't love, this isn't my fault. That moment is everything. I don't believe in closure, I believe in continuation. In choosing again and again not to hand your power back to the people who tried to take it. I believe in voices, especially the small ones, especially the ones that were told to be quiet. If you ask me what revenge looks like now, I won't say prison. I won't say courtrooms, I won't say exposure. I'll say this, waking up without fear, building a life that doesn't include them, becoming someone they can no longer reach. Marissa will grow up knowing she is safe. She will never have to whisper. She will never have to disappear. She will never confuse control for love. That is my legacy, not survival, not endurance, freedom. And as for me, I no longer live in reaction. I live in direction. And that, more than anything she ever did to me, is how I won.